Hi, I'm DuEwa Frazier, and I'm the host and producer and founder-creator of Nerdacity Podcast. Today I have a wonderful guest for you, and as always, check out the archive and past interviews of Nerdacity either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Instagram Live, and others. Hope you'll also follow us on X at NerdacityPod1, and feel free to leave a comment on the Spotify page regarding this episode and future episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Dr. Nina Angela Mercer is a cultural worker and multidisciplinary artist living in Washington, D.C. Nina's writing is published in the Killens Review of Arts and Letters, Black Renaissance Noire, Continuum, the Journal of African Diaspora Drama, Theater and Performance, A Gathering of the Tribes magazine online, Breakbeat Poets, Volume 2, Black Girl Magic, Are You Entertained? Black Popular Culture in the 21st Century, Performance Research Journal, Represent New Plays for Multicultural Young People, So We Can Know, Writers of Color on Pregnancy, Loss, Abortion, and Birth, Black Ecologies Zine, and tBTR, a journal of the Black Theater Network. She is also excited about a collection, The Double, her newest book, The Double, a Choreodrama and a Choreopoem. Nina's choreodramas, choreopoems, and plays include Gutta, Beautiful, Itagua, Meiji, A Road and a Prayer, Gypsy and the Bully Door, Elijah Heen Becomes Wind, Charisma at the Crossroads, Sparrow, A Compulsion for Breathing. From 2020 to 2023, Nina was a collaborating writer and performer for the development of Urban Bush Women's Haint Blue, which premiered for the Junebird Productions. And let's pick up with Nina Angela Mercer now. Greetings, Nina. Greetings, Nina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm so excited to talk with you about your work.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
And so I want to congratulate you on your newest book, The Double, a choreodrama and a choreopoem. And we really want to know about your journey in terms of, kind of going back in the past and bringing us forward to this latest work. And so I wanted to know, when did you first know that you were a poet and playwright?
Mhm. That is a very interesting question for me because I think that there is sometimes a pivotal moment or a catalyzing moment when you realize that one particular genre or medium, if you're an artist, speaks to you. But I feel like for me, what has always been most the sticking place for me, so to put in a way, has been interdisciplinarity or multidisciplinarity and live performance or theater since my childhood, really, because I started out in dance theater as a child, as a really young person.
Mm.
But I've always known the live arts to hold an immediacy as an artist in, connection to your audience. that was deeply fulfilling. And I remember distinctly finding Intozake Shange's For Color Girls on my parents' bookshelf when I was growing up in Northeast DC,
Mm.
in like my junior high school years. My aunt, my father's oldest sister, had given both of my parents a copy of the book. And because I was just an avid reader and encouraged to read from a really young age, and really, I think, had an advanced palate as a young Black girl reading, I had already gravitated toward Intozake Shange before I claimed art as my vocation. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So it's
Wow.
hard for me to like pinpoint a moment because I feel like um, I was always, like, from a very young age, immersed in a world where poetry and theater were absolutely like inseparable and a part of my education. I can remember going to see August Wilson's Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Um,
Yes.
when I was in junior high school at Jefferson in Washington, D.C. And Jefferson Junior High School, if you don't know DC, it's right by the wharf, down by the water near Arena Stage, which is still one of the premier regional theater companies in the country, definitely on the East Coast, certainly in DC. And that was the first time at that place when I was like 13, where I saw August Wilson's work directed by Lloyd Richards with Delroy Lindo playing Loomis. So
Wow.
yeah,
You just
yeah.
mentioned Delroy Lindo, and did he pass recently in the last year or two?
I, you
Or
know, I don't know. I don't want to say so
sure,
because
okay, yeah.
I'm not sure. The last I interacted with. I feel like he did a film or
Mhm.
something within the past 3 years, but
Yeah.
I know he came and did some retrospective August Wilson symposium at Howard University where I did a presentation in like 2016, and he was there to talk about his relationship to August's work. He's an incredible actor. I even heard him do a reading of Toni Morrison's work, I think in
Yes.
like, yeah. So
And you know
I don't
what?
want,
My apologies, because now I said, you know what? Let me go to Google. I misspoke. I must have confused him with another actor, but he is very much with
yeah,
us, and he's an excellent actor. Yes, he was a star in Crooklyn. That's how I remember him.
yes, yes. But
Hmm.
when I saw him play Loomis in and Joe Turner's Come and Gone, I just recall being stunned and in awe and completely taken in by the alchemy of the theater, sitting there in the
Hmm.
dark, with everyone like focused in this performance that, we knew, it's a performance. I mean, we're in a traditional theater with a proscenium stage, but in that moment, being completely taken by his
Wow.
performance. And I know that that had an indelible impact on my life.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that totally, thank you for that, Nina. And that totally leads to my next question, which I know you mentioned, Dr. Intozaki Shange, and you mentioned Delroy Lindo, but who are your inspirations? So you mentioned seeing August Wilson's work on the stage, but if you had to think more on your inspirations or primary people
Mhm, mhm.
who've really kind of
Who
always
would
been
they
with
be?
you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Zora Neale Hurston, hands down, again, I
Yes.
was a really early reader and really grew up in a family of artists, including other writers. And so I'm remembering reading Alice Walker's the In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, and I was maybe 12 or 13. I
Mm-hmm.
had read The Color Purple when I was in the sixth grade, but in Search of Our Mother's Gardens, there's an essay about Zora. And so Alice opened the door.
Mm.
And then it was like I wanted to read Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. My younger aunt gave me her copy, which I still have. I mean, the cover is falling off of it because it's paperback. But I love to read aloud, and I still love to read aloud. People are surprised by that, but it is a practice of mine, and I always love that. And I remember the orality of Their Eyes Were Watching God blew me away.
Mm.
And at the time, I was young and I didn't know the fullness of her life story, and how her career evolved. But of course, later, as a scholar and researcher, and someone who later read more of her work, from Dust Tracks on a Road and Mules and Men, from an anthropological framework. But as I continued to study her work, came to realize that, she was a playwright through and through. And
Mm.
she played theater as it still is today, was very hard to break into for
Mm.
Zora.
Yeah.
And she had a relationship with Langston Hughes where they were collaborating to write this play, Mulebone.
Yes.
And you know the
The
history.
history, yes, it didn't. Well, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, well, it's a conversation, but
Yeah.
like I learned later, long story short, that Zora she had these opportunities, or these desires to break in even further to theater and Broadway. And she even was supposed to have a contract during the Works Progress Administration to have one of her plays produced that was focused on working down there in the Everglades, and I think it had like a worker, like a real like worker centric kind of theme, and she thought that that play was going to get put on, and
Yeah.
the WPA chose the Voodoo Macbeth, Orson Welles' play, instead. And
Mm-hmm.
it is then that Zora leaves New York and she goes to Haiti
Hating.
and she writes
Yeah.
Their Eyes Were Watching God. And so
Mhm.
now today, when I look back and I think of how, for so many of us, we're daughters, we're Zora's daughters, we're inspired by her. We were lucky enough to come up, in the radiant light of Alice Walker's finding her, or searching for her grave.
Mhm.
Um, but it's like that orality in Their Eyes Were Watching God is a huge window into who she could have been even more of as a playwright. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like,
Sure.
I feel like that's one of the things that drew me to her, that I could hear the liveness in
Yes.
the language.
I appreciate you saying that, Nina, because thinking about the dialogue in that book, it is literally like you think about August Wilson and you think about the energy and dialogue and just the vernacular and everything that is the music. It's like all of
The
that is in Zora's work.
blues. Yes.
Right. So I feel you when you say this is like a play. This
Yeah.
is,
And so do you see though how in truth, I feel like being a poet is really being open to spirit and being a vessel to translate, and channel these truths in the form that most suits what needs to be told or said or shared.
Mhm.
And there is poetry in the voice, in the narrative, voices, and Their Eyes Are Watching God, as much as there is the theatrical. And when you read Mulebone, as it's been recovered, as a script, I think you see that. You see like some of the same storytelling techniques. But I also have to say, in addition to Intozaki, Adrienne Kennedy really blows me away and is a huge inspiration because of her
Mhm.
devotion to Black women's interior landscape, our psyche, and really taking our psychological lives very seriously and opening that up. And like how often our stage is devoted to the interiority of a Black woman's mind. And so I know that in my work, in particular, in well, both of the works in the double, I think are inspired by that type of exploration too, to
Mm.
feel like we can take those types of liberties. And so, yeah, Adrienne Kennedy would be another. Ellen Stewart, yes, the founder of La Mama, is a
Mhm.
Black woman who, is very much avant-garde and performance art in terms of like the legacy that she leaves behind in the space that is La Mama. And that's something too that I feel like a lot of us who like kind of blur the boundaries and could land in like experimental, avant-garde kind of categories as Black women making live performance art. Like sometimes there's a difficulty of people to know where to put us, but I love how Ellen Stewart made the space. And also, um, the last one I'll name is Dr. Barbara Ann Tier for the
Oh,
same reason. Yes.
National Black Theater.
Yes, but
Or was,
especially
or was it
and
Art Theater, National Black in Harlem?
National Black Theater. Yep,
Theater, okay.
National Black Theater, Action Arts, but really NBT,
NBT.
and just again that institution building with
Mm-hmm.
longevity is just incredibly powerful.
Mm. Wow, that's wonderful. And thank you for those names. And this is, an education masterclass for anyone who listens to this. They can go back, students can go back and look up these names if they're not familiar with everyone mentioned. So I really appreciate that. And so, Nina, in thinking about, you're quite a prolific poet and have been a playwright. Publishing your works, producing. How do you balance your life as a poet and playwright in addition to being a leader in theater as a executive director and a producer?
Woo! How do I balance? That's a great
If
question.
okay.
I'm not always sure that I do balance. But I do. I do though. I think the way that I can best answer that is that retrospectively, at this time in my life, where I have decades in my career, in my vocation and my development as a multidisciplinary artist and scholar, I have to say, because we're calling out, my life as a poet and a playwright, and also as an entrepreneur and producer. But
Hmm.
I also, I write scholarly work focused on theater and performance and cultural studies, and I have an MFA in fiction. You
Mm.
know,
Yes.
so I'm really multidisciplinary, and that is part of my answer to your question. Is that over time I grew very accustomed to learning how to trust the rhythm of my artistic journey
Mm.
and noting that sometimes you'll have multiple ideas, or I'll have multiple ideas. One thing, may be a play, another thing is creative nonfiction, a book project, another thing, maybe something else, you know, and I will give myself grace and
Mm.
understanding that everything is going to be at a different place in time. So as long as I continue to track with the things that I want to do and do a little bit toward it, eventually a rhythm emerges and balance is within that rhythm and that allowing.
Mm,
I feel like, for example, when I was working on my PhD in theater and performance, I had a research method that was in part um, critical ethnographic, critically ethnographic, meaning that critical ethnography is a branch of cultural anthropology, and it's when you're researching a subject, you have a case study, maybe it's a community. For me, it might be a dance company with a social practice. You are not only doing that research, but you're also involved in their process and like giving or bringing your expertise to their project so that you're not just taking like saying, oh, here's some research I want to write about your work and that's going to advance my career, but also how can I be proactively helpful to this community in addition to what I do as a writer. And what that meant in my creative process was that I was actually able to collaborate and make art with dance theater companies as my research and also as like my work throughout my research process so that I never had to feel like I'm giving up my art to get this PhD.
wow. I love that. And that's so powerful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
and it
so
was
many
yeah,
people feel like in terms of being a scholar that, and you're sometimes even told that in some way you have to choose or you've got to put one down for the other, even if
yes,
it's for a time so that you can, get that done.
they
um
sure do. And
yeah.
well, for one, I mean, I waited to come back for my PhD. So I was older, and I think I was really set in what it was I wanted to do because I had approached a PhD as a younger woman and had hit this barrier, and realized I needed to grow more before
Mm,
I could do that work. And I
yeah.
think that's another example of when the balance has come from me allowing myself the grace to pivot, to pause, to do things in perhaps non-traditional ways, non-linear ways.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's been frustrating because it has meant that I'm working against maybe the current in some ways, but in the longevity of it, looking back and in the longevity of it and of like really embracing that approach that was really true to my heart, I understand it as having a that type of effect. Yeah. Like,
Mm.
yeah. If like, accepting the both and I think too now today that is more familiar to people because there's more interdisciplinarity now than there was.
Yes, it sounds like you learn, you know yourself and you know your process, and you were not going to fit in a box. Rather, you were going to make that endeavor fit within your life and your process and how you do things.
Yes, and I
And
didn't come to it like I know how this is all going to turn out. I
mm,
think that when you reach a certain stage, and I believe all artists, if you keep doing it for a while, this, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you know, and that commitment is part of it too. Like, surely my feelings have been hurt, and surely times I've been imbalanced. in my practice where like I may have written a play or there may have been some project and I was just like so wanted things to go a particular way and it didn't.
Mm,
And, in those moments, I guess I wasn't balanced, right? Because, like, that's when you're like wanting things to turn out so much in this one way. And then when it doesn't, you crash. And I've had those moments. And I think those moments have also taught me in the longevity of the life that you're going to have those moments and then eventually you have to put the next your foot in front of the other and carry on and
mm.
find and rebalance, right, and find the alignment. So because I definitely haven't had a perfect journey at all.
Sure, I appreciate that. But that speaks to how you've been able to do so much and do it so well and the honorings that you've received, the recognitions, awards, your degrees, your publishing, it all speaks to that. You've been truly doing something right. Um, and so thank you for that. And so now, Nina, I really want to ask you about your book, The Double, a
Yes.
choreodrama and a choreopoem. Would love to hear what inspired this work and just your general thoughts on this work and where you hope it to lead.
Yes, absolutely. So the double, a choreodrama and a choreopoem, came out of, well, a few dynamics. So, first, what I'll say is that it was published with a mutual aid society called Kavaya, which in Sri Lankan language means circle. And I met members of this mutual aid society, Kavya, when I was a postdoctoral fellow at Georgetown University in the Racial Justice Institute at the Woodshed Center for Art, Thought, and Culture.
Hmm.
They're young graduate students, Ashani Kotage and Jen Manafee, and they were both helping one another to publish their work. And in conversation with me, I thought, oh, how interesting, that you all are using your resources, pooling your resources in order to get your work out into the world. And I had had a desire to do this with my plays for some years. After seeing that Soho Rep in New York, the theater company, they
Hmm.
have a small press that where they publish the work that they develop out of Soho Rep. And I saw that, and because I do have my producing entity, Oceanana Rising Incorporated, I thought like aspirationally that at some point we should be able to publish work that we produce. But, I kind of put that on the back burner for Ocean Anna Rising and also for my own work because so many things were happening. Again, as we were talking before, like I get the pacing, sometimes it's not the time to do it.
Hmm.
But when I finally got this fellowship at Georgetown, this postdoctoral fellowship, at the Woodshed Center for Art, Thought, and Culture, I had the opportunity to forge a collaboration with them that became a theater lab that we named the Lorraine Hansberry Experimental Play Laboratory. And I brought my play, Gypsy and the Bully Door, into that lab
Hmm.
because even though I had written the play some years ago, there was this unfinished component, a huge component of the play that was unfinished. And that was that it had not been scored, like the music, because I had written songs to help forward the storyline of Gypsy and the Bully Door, the choreodrama in the double.
Hmm.
And through the lab that we created, we were finally able to score it and bring in my music director, Matthew Miller, um, and have him with his partner, Dave create the sound of the show. And because we were able to score it and take it through this intensive lab, I was also able to really solidify, like, get the language absolutely as I wanted it to be, like add new scenes, tighten it, add a glossary. And then I said, well, you know what? I think now it's ready. It's
Wow.
ready to be published. And it just coincided with me meeting these brilliant young folk from the Kavaya Mutual Aid Society.
Hmm.
So we said, well, let's do this. As it really became both an experiment, a political statement, because I also think a lot about the time to publish and how, like, I could have submitted this somewhere, but I wanted to be able to publish them together.
Right.
I wanted to
Mhm.
be able to publish them with the poems that I included. I wanted to be able to include those QR codes that send you to video links of things I wanted people to be able to see. I wanted this glossary in there. I wanted to do things in the way that I wanted to do them for this.
Yes.
And the other part of it was that I've been really generous in my practice. I'm an organizer, I think, at my core. And there are people who have taught both of the works, the choreodrama and the choreopoem, in the double,
Yeah.
because I had just shared PDFs over years. And I
Mm.
mean, since like 2012, 2013.
Wow.
And I guess because I'm always producing, it didn't dawn on me in any particular way until I started publishing more, until I started publishing more in journals and anthologies. And
Mhm.
I'm also doing the plays. And then I said, wait a minute, they've been circulating my work.
Yes.
And
And
I'm influencing
and
people
not
in
for
ways.
nothing, I know if teachers get a hold of it, because teachers are known for notorious sharing of the works like that, you know?
Yes. And what started dawning on me is that, and I think the PhD brought it into sharper focus because of the way that I was having to be all up into citation and IRB,
Mhm.
processes. But people don't necessarily cite work that gets shared like that.
It's true. Can I ask you, just clarifying, and for those who will listen, are you
Mhm.
speaking to the understanding that this is not only a creative work, just that you, as you mentioned, you have been sharing it as a person who is community minded and understanding the power of theater and the writing, but that you're now beginning through your PhD process, understanding, hey, this is your intellectual property as
Yes.
well. Like, it's time to
Yes.
like bring it under an umbrella that is like, okay, this is a published in, this is a real certified work here that is under
Yes.
copyright.
Yes, because what happened, so absolutely. So I shared and generously and wanted to do so, but there have been people who have taught Gypsy and the Bully Door in their classes in college classrooms. There have been people who were teaching Itagwa Meiji, wrote in a prayer, the choreo poem, because it was online and accessible by video. So
Mhm.
people would maybe just search on the internet choreo poem and it would come up.
Yeah.
And I finally, was able, I mean, I have so many things happening that it was like I had to get the right timing and the
Mm.
right team. But I finally said, let me go ahead and do this because I think it's important, for it to be available in portable knowledge, as they
Yes.
say.
And
So
now it can be like colleges and professors who want to like purchase this as the course textbook. You know what I
yes,
mean? As the,
yes,
The same way
And they
we do
can
with
cite
August
it.
Wilson and anyone else.
Yeah, it has an ISBN, right? So it's like that, because I just feel like we are such a commodity driven society
Hmm.
that even though the script itself can be cited, we know that there is a way to cite what they call unpublished work because it's not, circulating with a published company,
Right.
but there's a higher premium of value and respect
Yes.
given to that which is bound.
It is so true. Thank you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was also going to say to your point about they can go and see, what you've done on YouTube and things like that. Yes, we know that can be cited. But as you mentioned, the respect and the value, especially in the academy,
Hmm.
is really particular to what has been bound and published by a publisher.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the thing too about playwrights, I just want to add is that I think one of the reasons I took this kind of route is also because for playwrights, the premium has always been first on the performance, like getting the production. And
Mhm.
publication of the play has usually been linked to the success of the production.
Mm.
And the success has often meant how long the run is. Like they're like all of these layers and levels that don't apply for books of poetry or for
Mhm.
novels or fiction.
Sure.
And so my focus had always been on just continuing to write more plays and trying to get them on stage. But
Mhm.
we're going to do all those things.
Exactly. You're doing it. And
Yeah.
that does lead into, so you did mention the production of one of the works in your book. But if you
Hmm.
wanted to speak more on anything current, or maybe even did you find you had to change the work
Yes.
quite a bit in terms of, because I'm thinking about from stage to the
To the
publishing, the
book.
print, right? I'm wondering about any changes or adaptation you saw that were needed. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So Itagwa Meiji, A Road in a Prayer, and Gypsy and the Bully Door are the two works in the double, along with a couple of poems. Um, but it's really focused on those two works. Those two well, Itagwa Meiji in particular has been produced many times over the years, since about 2010, 2011. It's been produced even at the New Eurekan,
Mm,
in New York more than once. It's been produced at Rutgers, New Brunswick,
mm,
and just at many, many places. And Gypsy and the Bully Door has had an interesting journey, as I said, because I really challenged myself to kind of, I hate to say create it because it's like, oh, I'm the first, and I don't know that. But what I do know is that I was determined to bring go-go music, the indigenous music and culture here in Washington, D.C.,
mhm,
um, into conversation with the storytelling of theater
mm,
and the spirituality of kind of ancestor masquerade ritual practices. And because initially all I could see in my vision when I first had the vision of just a piece of this play, I
mhm,
knew that there was a go-go band on stage and that there was this character, the mayor, who was like narrating this Black diasporic contemporary myth in
mm,
song, like a lead talker at the go-go. But what I didn't realize is that I was going to have to write songs. I tried to use covers. I mean, if you were
Yeah.
to see the first script, and that's why sometimes in the work, you see like the mayor introduces the scenes and it's like introducing songs, or there are a lot of song references, or like this
Hmm.
intertextuality in the play that's both pop culture, hip hop and blues, all this Black music, but also Black literature, there are references to sunrise. It's like, kind of in that way that we sample in hip hop, and kind of collage and
Hmm.
quilt. You have that happening in the work. But I was attempting a style that was ahead of where I was as an artist when I first started it, because it was like 2011 when we did the first reading for it. And then I had to take it back into the lab and I realized, oh, I'm writing songs. I got to write whole songs. So that play has now, like I said, we took it through the lab, we got it tight. We're now raising money to do it all the way full out. And so I'm really excited about that through our production company, Oceanana Rising, our arts education nonprofit organization, and its producing arm. I'm also really excited about another playwright's work, Nick Hadikwa Maluko, who is one of the playwrights whose work we've developed with Oceanana Rising, the nonprofit I co-founded. Nick's play is Why Africa 123, a queerly scripted African Fantasia. And we're looking to premiere both of those works within a 3-year time period, which I'm hoping will solidify us as the kind of company that can take avant-garde experimental Black art from like the stage of a seed or a concept all the way to premiere with like really engaging community workshops, like partnered with the projects. Um, and what else am I really excited about? I'm excited about, like, I have this solo project I've been nurturing for like years, like since I think like 2019, and the quarantine kind of changed my approach to it.
Hmm.
It's more like solo performance piece work, because I am a mover, a dancer, and I also make things with my hands and visual art. And I had a studio in the South Bronx where I was making, like, I was building the world that I wanted to show the piece in. And then the quarantine hit. And I lost the space. And what that did was it turned me more inward with this project. And so I don't know when I'm going to share it, but I've been like making pieces of it and exploring different angles of it. And that's core to my practice as an artist of like, people will be like, why don't you apply for this or that? And I'll apply for this or that, but I don't want to be applying for this or that and letting those, funding opportunities dictate what the work becomes.
Sure.
And also, you know, I don't know, I'm a process freak, as some would say. Like I really love my processes, and there's a depth in the slow unfurling. Um,
Mm.
but that project, I think it frightens me the most. And so I think it must be what I have to do. And then like I have 2 book projects right now that I'm actively working with editors, and just like they need to be in the world. I have like
Sounds
two,
exciting.
yeah, yeah, it's a rich time, but as it unfolds, as it
And
all
so,
unfolds.
and so, Nina, what in your view, and I know this is like huge, it's probably, you could probably talk a lot about it, but just in thinking about, the world, our society, what do you find could be an important role or perspective for today's Black artists, Black poets, playwrights, novelists, as you mentioned? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I absolutely do. I mean, I think that our role as Black artists, cultural workers, thinkers, educators, creatives, is the role that we've always had to be bold and brave and honest and loving enough to speak truth to power, to reflect the times, to, as Tony K. Bambara would say, to make the revolution irresistible.
Mm,
Lorraine Hansberry would talk about how we didn't need to look to the kings and queens of the earth. We could look to our everyday folk, for these stories that illuminate humanity. I think that especially now, we are called to be even more courageous. But if we look back to the humanity that Bert Williams brought to minstrelsy and the political commentary and critique embedded in his performances, if we look back at or think about Elaine Locke,
mm,
W.E.B. Du Bois, you know, Archibald Grimke, when we think about Sojourner Truth, our great poets, our great thinkers, our great warriors, they were always courageous. They knew that Nina Simone, it was like to
yeah.
have no fear was the ultimate freedom. And I think that as artists, that's what we're ultimately striving for when we create.
Mm.
So I think we have to be free, which means we have to be fearless in these times.
Powerful. Truly. Thank you for that. And Dr. Nina, can you tell us how we can best support your work in terms of those who may not be in the area with you, purchasing the double, being able to support, utilize your plays in the classroom? How can we best support your work at this time?
Absolutely. Well, you can get on my website because we are definitely doing this entrepreneurially. Like we are doing it in the self-determined fashion that
Yeah.
I so respect. So you just get on www.ninaangelamercer.com/store. That's www.ninaangelamercer.com/store. And that's where you can buy a copy of the double. I will get it out to you within the week until we have sold out of this limited run edition. This is our second printing, and we want to sell all these books, and then we'll print another round with Black Classic Digital. So just reach us on the website, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Nina Angela Mercer. And there you'll get all of, the updates that come as well as on the website.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nina Angela Mercer, for joining me on Afrofutures Pod. And I look forward to seeing all the exciting and wonderful things that you're doing. And we look forward to following you and supporting your work.
Thank you so much for welcoming me. This has really been a joy to be in conversation with you, DuEwa.
Thank you so much.